Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Inspiring Leadership podcast. I'm really delighted to have Jason Zintak. And Jason is the CEO of 6sense. Jason, declared by Goldman Sachs as the most exceptional entrepreneur of 2023. It's nice to have someone who is currently recognized what they are. I was saying to somebody the other day that they were famous about 20 years ago. And I said, don't people describe you as a has-been? And he said, Jonathan, it's better to be a has-been than a might-have-been. So you're neither a has-been or a might-have-been. You are someone who definitely has done an awful lot of things, Jason. And we're going to be talking about that later. But the number of businesses that you've had that have been acquired by famous companies and that you've gone on to create 6sense, which is doing incredibly well. Welcome to the Inspiring Leadership podcast.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, Jason, I really enjoyed the chat that you and I had a couple of weeks back as we were just getting to know each other, which I think is an important part. We've got to have that kind of rapport, just like you talk about in your business, that smart moves, prioritizing people, and a culture of innovation, which has been very important to you. And I really found you very easy to get along with. So I know we're going to have a lot of fun on this. We're also talking about people that you find inspiring, because I always find when there's an inspiring leader and I ask them who they find inspiring, you know you've got some real quality people. So you mentioned three people to me. Do you want to just say who these three are and what particular qualities stand out for you about these people who are inspiring CEOs that you know?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share it. Life's a collection of all of our experiences and the journey that gets you there. So for me, it's sort of easy, and for most people, I would think it's a couple come to mind right away. One is the former CEO of SAP, which was my alma mater. Grew up at SAP, and that's Bill McDermott. Had a fantastic time with him. His skills and attributes were setting high goals, highly personable, highly motivational person. And by the way, I wouldn't say I emulate his characteristics. I'm sort of a different leader, but he was very inspiring in setting goals and ones you think you can reach, and then together as a team we'd go get them. And he very good with names, good with people, and great memory, and I enjoyed that. Another one was actually my first job out of school was with Northwestern Mutual, selling life insurance, cold calling, 100% commission. No income out of the gates, despite a college career that would have naturally took me to other jobs. His name was Bill Goodwin. He was the Goodwin agency in Atlanta, and it was a top 3 Northwestern agency at the time. Extremely charismatic person, but actually very real, very personable, very genuine, very heartfelt, and took a chance. Didn't hire many kids out of college, and I was one of the lucky few, and learned a lot, and also scratched my head like, why am I doing this for no money? And what business do I have telling someone in their 40s, 50s how to plan their financial life? So it's sort of quite ironic getting advice from a 22-year-old.
Yeah,
and then I'd say
special.
the third.
Just staying with that for a second before we go to the third one. I mean, I think to have had both those two influence you, and particularly being put on the spot, where it's all about your ability to go out there and make a connection with people. I mean, it must have been an incredibly good grounding for you for the start of your career, wasn't it?
It was not the usual path, right? I graduated with advertising, marketing, and psychology as my majors, 2 majors. And I was working for ad agencies and marketing firms or departments like Coca-Cola, but I decided this route. And it's for that reason. They were ranked one of the #1 sales training programs, and I had to call people up, ask them to come visit in their home or office, ask them to divulge their personal details, and somehow find a connection that allowed me to be an advisor, again, which was very uncomfortable in my own skin at that time because I didn't know much. But that firm and Bill sort of taught me, how to be a good listener, how to understand, comprehend, and actually sell through that. And so it was incredibly formidable. Sleeping into 11 in college or whatever it was, and then starting your career, and we'd be in the office at 7 a.m. every day, and we'd start our pre-call routines and go down the very rote activity list in order to day after day. But
Well done.
it was really correct.
Yeah. And the third one?
Third one was sort of middle of my career, which was working at Responses. The CEO was Dan Springer, and Dan Springer went on to be the CEO of DocuSign. And Dan was a different leader from Bill, both Bills. But for me, authenticity and sort of a cerebral analytical approach to business was something I valued. I thought we were complementary in our skill sets there. I was running sales for the company. And yeah, learning from a sort of a different mindset and how others think, and just his, I think it's when I finally came into my own skin and said, oh, you know, Dan is different than the last Bill that I worked with, and they're both successful, and why can't I just be me? You know, I don't have to emulate either. I can take elements of those two, and it's, for me, it's when I finally started to realize, you know, you can be you and be successful. You don't have to be a copycat.
Yeah, and I think that's such a profound, it sounds simple, but it's such a profound comment. And I know when I think about the people who influenced me, who in my case were commanding officers and generals who I aspired to be like, having not had a father figure because my dad was killed when I was 2.5. So I was sort of looking up to these people. And at times it was very hard to be them because they had very distinctive characteristics that weren't me. But I do remember one of them saying, Jonathan, what's your life plan? Chap who became General Lord Dannatt in the end. He was episode 200 on this podcast. And I said, yeah, well, Colonel, I don't have a life plan. He said, well, Jonathan, if you don't have a life plan, you end up in somebody else's life plan. And guess what they've got planned for you? And I go, I don't know. And he said, he held up his first finger and his thumb. It was just really small, this little guy. He said, not very much. So have a plan. It may change, but have a plan and go and be you. And that was profound, a bit like you were looking at Dan and Bill there and going, hey, they're different, but they're both successful. So I could be me and maybe I could be successful. Yeah. So talking about you, let's talk about you now. And I'm always interested in the experiences that you've had, Jason, that have shaped you and turned you into the leader I'm experiencing today, who's running hugely successful business, 200 million turnover starting from 5 million. You might correct me if that was my guess at what it was, but 6sense is doing really well. You've been there 6.5 years. What experiences, take us right back to the beginning. I mean, like we were talking about, you were brought up with quite a powerful religion, the Catholic faith, that was quite important to you. And I think we shouldn't hide from when people do have something they believe in and some values that they live by. But who shaped you along the way and at the beginning into the leader you are today?
Ooh, big question. Well, I would like to, touch on the last comment to answer this as well, is that in the leaders that shaped me, you also learn from the leaders that perhaps you didn't admire for some reason, some attribute. And if we come back to that last topic, it wasn't until my mid-30s and talking about Dan when I realized it's okay to be yourself. Because I found myself in the early years trying to be like the other leaders, almost carbon copy. And that made me very uncomfortable. And I just knew it wasn't quite right, but I thought that's what you had to do. Coming back to shaping, where do we start, Jonathan? Are we talking first job here or school or?
I mean, I think even upbringing in school. I mean, can you think back to any sort of profound events that happened to you that you thought that looking back, because I think it was, Steve Jobs who said at the time you don't make sense of all these different things that happened. It's only now, Jason, as you look back over your 54 years that you can join the dots and you can see how certain things have shaped you as you are now. Would you pick out, I don't know, 2 or 3 events that happened to you that you go, that's made a big impact on me?
Yeah, sure. Probably growing up in rural Pennsylvania, an hour outside Philadelphia, Wyomissing, PA, or Reading, PA. Some people know it on the Monopoly board. Parents, great parents. Father was a small business entrepreneur, had a needlecraft, needlepoint kit company called Dimensions. Eventually became distributed in Walmarts and Targets, and fun watching him. Very driven, very motivated. His father, my grandfather, also an entrepreneur. Small business, Pennsylvania, yarn business called Karen. And my mother, who was a physician's assistant and a cancer research clinician and director, very warm personality, accepting, and they were a perfect complement. They ultimately got divorced when I was somewhere in middle school. But the thing that shaped me was the two of them and what they brought to the table, the complement. I was relatively shy, but very motivated by sports. And frankly, I was awkward. I was awkward in junior high and high school, and was not at all remotely comfortable, other than the fact that I was somewhat good at some of these sports I tried. And then in the middle of that, my father wanted me to go away to boarding school. I don't know if I was bad or what was going on, but I didn't want to go because I was finally starting to come into my own skin with friends. And sophomore year, shipped off to a high school in New Hampshire, and started that awkward journey all over again. And it was pretty traumatic emotionally. I switched sports. I joined a rowing team, the crew team. What formerly was a soccer player and a tennis player. And I joined that sport for different reasons, and excelled and had a good time there. Very difficult, but somewhat traumatic because I was awkward and shy and had to regain friends. And I can't tell you then that I really enjoyed it, other than my sports. When I look back on it, much like Northwestern, it was very formidable in the experiences and the education I had, and shaped me today, and I'm glad I went. But that sort of mix of father pushing me hard and you can do it. He did it because he believed in me, and I said, "Oh, I guess I'll go if I can get in." It probably would be good for me. As painful and
Did you
sort
go
of
to boarding school? Did you say
tough,
you did go to boarding school?
boarding school. Yep,
Yeah, it's because I went to boarding school as well, and was that you were away from the family in there in dorms and things like that? Yeah,
correct.
they've just had a book published by the Princess Diana's brother. I was going to say Charles Spencer, but anyway, forgotten his first name, Spencer. And he's written a book called A Very Private School. And in his particular case at boarding school, it was full of some pretty unpleasant teachers who were either pedophiles or bullies or psychopaths, including the headmaster. Was your schooling okay? I suppose if you were a good sportsman, you'd probably do okay in that. But was
Oh
the
yeah, no, nothing like that. It was the top academic place, and the professors were amazing, and the kids were incredibly smart and smarter than me. And I went from an A student to a B student, and it's tough. I mean, studied till 2 a.m. every night for the most part, Saturday classes, and then a
wow.
grueling sort of sport. Rowing is a 3-season sport. We rowed, well, we trained in the winter, but rowed fall and spring, and it was just demanding. And at a
Yeah,
time when you're shaping yourself as a kid and candidly not that confident.
yeah,
So that was the tough part, and I'm so happy for it. Class size was 12 or 13 tops around what they called the Harkness table, which was a round conference room table, and Socratic sort of teaching method. And it's great, lob the question out there and let everyone debate. And so that form of discussion as opposed to lecture was formidable.
yeah. And that's really helped you today, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I think you're going to ask me sort of some of my lessons, but the number one thing I believe I've learned over time, both schooling and career, is to listen. Like,
Yeah,
practice being a good listener. It teaches you a lot. It helps you devise a strategy. It helps you interact. But listening is a skill that we don't do naturally. There's the people are uncomfortable in silence and listening. Yeah, people like to talk. So
yeah,
probably the best thing I learned is just how to interpret, listen, try to understand another's perspective, and then rally on.
yeah. In fact, I was just on a call with a guy in Australia, Oscar Trimboli, and Oscar wrote a book on how to listen. And it's funny, he said that, the speed with which we talk and the speed with which we think and the speed at which we listen, they're all so different, that you have so much time between the speed of someone speaking, which is far slower than the speed of your thinking, and of your ability to listen is that you're then planning the next thing and so on. And we do have this terrible habit of interrupting, and it's something I'm constantly working on, as I'm sure you never stop practicing that one, do you?
Right. I'm trying right now.
Yeah, no, this is where we both get awkward and don't start speaking. But that sounds very interesting in that sort of high intensity sport, academia, um, where no one can really opt out because you're in a round table and you're all speaking or listening to debate and the things that are going on. I think that's really good. But I wonder when you sort of think about some of the other leaders that you've had on the way, if you were to pick out some of the lessons you've learned from the good leaders, and then some of the lessons from you've had some bad ones as well. We don't need to name the guilty bastards, but if you just share a few of the good things that you learned en route, and then let's talk about what some bad leaders tend to do and how not to be like them.
Yeah, I'll come back a little bit to sort of Bill at SAP. Setting goals is really important, and actually being inspired what you do, sort of following your heart. Not what someone else tells you should do. For whatever reason, I've always had like an inner drive to do something and to do better. And one reason I went into commission sales, 100% commission out of school, was I wanted to make more money. I didn't really want to make the standard salary and then get a 3% bump and then a 3% bump and then that's not interesting. I want to go faster. And I understood there was an opportunity to effectively make double or triple on 100% commission, but it's tough. You gotta be willing to bet on yourself. And so I have always bet on myself, and eventually I made the transition over to software when I saw software was this hot new industry, and that was right out of insurance to software. And interviewed like crazy, got rejected everywhere, but was fairly passionate that I could learn anything. And so eventually I got that break. I got that break at SAP after being rejected from SAP, and assembled a bunch of psychology and aptitude and handwriting tests that other interviews had done, put those results back on the manager's desk in an envelope and said, please reconsider. And they did.
Wow.
That guy was Chris Larson, who was at SAP. And they hired me. And, I was, most of these careers, I was young, but I had an insatiable curiosity to learn. And I can remember other mentors along the way. One with a great sales rep named Fran Kane. You got to find people that will identify with you and sort of accept you and teach you. And he was a great mentor and teacher. And we found a friendship, and we were not, he was 15 years older, but he let me ask questions, almost like a puppy dog in training. And I soaked it up and followed. And he was one of the greats. And I went on to work with him and then do other things outside SAP. But yeah, those moments of finding someone that will trust you and take you under the wing and let you flourish versus compete with you.
Yeah. And I'm assuming in your nature at 6sense, you probably do a similar thing where you mentor and coach people. Is that your style?
Yeah, I think I try as much as possible to, keep the company undressed and normal and, approachable, so that, one thing I always thought when I was growing up is, wow, those CEOs or senior VPs, they're untouchable. How do I get there? And then I started to slowly develop this. Well, I think I can do what they can do. I watched them, like, yeah, they don't seem all that special. I mean, other than talented, but I have that in me. And so I try to like demystify leadership and say, yeah, we're all normal. We just have some age under our belt, and we learned along the way. And so, yeah, it's very important to me to speak in real terms and that authenticity and humility to the company. So everyone has a chance to learn, as opposed to be afraid to raise the hand. I remember one boss said something at the time, there are dumb questions. And I thought about that. I was like, really? That's awfully, and this person was of high intellect. I'm like, seem very smart to tell that to young people. That they're surely not going to raise their hand, because now this person's judging their question as whether it's smart or not. And so yeah, I disagree with that advice.
Yeah, and that's leads me on nicely to lessons from misleaders, as I call them, the Harry Potter's Dementors who suck the life out of you. Let's talk about some misleaders, but then I'd love you to talk a bit about 6sense and how you set it up, and in layman's terms, what it does, your business. But let's talk about firstly the misleaders and how not to be, in your experience from some of the people you've worked for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're in interesting times. You know, leadership styles have changed. There's very much sort of the uh, uh, stick versus carrot leadership style back in the 80s and 90s. You know, do as I say as I do. Um, I messed up that quote, but where it was, I don't know, very, very hierarchical, and untouchable, unapproachable style. And that style just did not work on me. And I had leaders that were, you know, some that say, I'm smarter than you, prove yourself. How, you know, to me, it was never about smarts, it was about teammates. Like we all, and as I experienced at 6sense and all the other companies, we're different shapes, colors, come from different backgrounds. We all have something to offer in some sort, and it's finding that, like, you know, that diamond in that person's rough that is fantastic at what they do and letting them shine. And so a team is made up of a collection of individuals, and they're just that, they're individuals. So I like to celebrate that. And one of the reasons I've been successful is I know what I am and I know what I'm not. And I surround myself with some of the best engineers and the co-founders of this company. Brilliant. I can't even explain what they do, barely. And we complement each other, and it's fun. And that's a one team. And by the way, that comes from rowing. Like you know, rowing is a different sport than soccer, and it's 8 people in a boat, 9 with the coxswain. We train as a team, we hang as a team. I told you it's 3 seasons, and you know, it's a little bit, you're only as strong as your weakest link, but we all want to be together because the synchronicity of rowing is actually your strength, not your brute force power. Yes, you want to be in shape, but it's a lot of finesse, and you get in that boat, you're together and you train. So it's that we all need each other as 8 oars in the water. And I don't know, I just love that bonding nature of small group of people forced to work together to accomplish one goal.
It just raises my brother Graham, who ended up being the president of the British Plastic Surgeons, and lovely guy, but played rugby for England schoolboys against the Australians, but he also rowed for Kings in London, and he was stroke, and he's taken many lessons from the boat, and his time living in the boathouse. He had a little room there in the boathouse, but that book, which was very influential for me and many leaders, Does It Make the Boat Go Faster? That question about what you do as a team, as an organization, is it adding to back to Bill McDermott in SAP, you know, that ambitious goal, that what you're doing, is it going to make the team, does it going to make the boat go faster? I don't know if you come across that saying in the book about the British team that won in the Sydney Olympics, and it was only by a fraction of a second that they beat the Australians, but it was because they had this incremental improvements, and they worked as a team.
Yeah, and the book does a great job of sort of explaining the behind the scenes of rowing. It's hard to appreciate unless you sort of go through this whole novel, because it's just, there's small, you know, finesse items that actually make those seconds of difference that help you win a race. So, you know, from misleaders, it's back to your question. It's you know, find the good and find a way to inspire people, not to you know, I always say use the carrot, not the stick. And as we go through this next generation of leadership and remote workforce, and you know, that connective tissue of being together, which is fleeting right now, we're going to learn even more leadership lessons. And so for me, that's one of my biggest challenges right now. Like, how do we lead in this new world? How do we keep people connected when naturally their human nature is to want to sort of be together, to bond, and to for that team to come together? And so that's something I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the topics that many of the CEOs that I either coach or I have them as guests on this podcast, they are struggling with it because their wish would be to have everybody back in the office. But they know that a lot of the younger generation like being working from home. Like I think of my son-in-law. I've got three of them, but one of my son-in-laws, and he's very happy being in his tracksuit or his pajamas and doing. He's a software engineer, doing his coding and stuff from home, and cracking it all and getting it done in a shorter space of time, but then having some time to go and have a cup of coffee and watch a bit of TV. Now, of course, you can't do that when you're in the office. So he loves being at home. He's hugely efficient. He's a very clever man. And it motivates him to get things done quicker, get all the work done, get all the coding done, and then to have some time for himself. But a number of CEOs are really missing having their teams together and the innovation that comes when you're physically in the same space. Have you found that magic sort of balance between it all, or are you inclined one way or the other for being in the office or hybrid being at home all the time?
I think it's different strokes, different folks, depends on the company, the application, where employees are. For us, we hired 2/3 of our workforce. We're now 1,200-ish employees. We hired 2/3 of that in COVID. So at the time, we didn't have a lot of offices and didn't open offices in COVID. So as we come out of it, we naturally don't have, and we've got offices in Austin and New York and San Francisco and London, but and a few others. But there wasn't space to go back to. So what do? And we hired pretty much from anywhere to get the best talent. And so now there isn't this natural meeting place to come back together. And by the way, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't enjoy COVID. I enjoyed not spending 2 hours of commuting every day. And it gave back to me. And so I think we're all going through this. Well, that was good. We like that. But somehow we may be losing a little bit of that, the benefits of the human interaction. So we still remain hybrid. We have these things called hub days where we ask people to go back to a hub on select days in the month. And that works. It's an attempt to get people together to work, and managers can decide if they need their staff back 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, a week, a month, a quarter. It's up to the manager's side. And so we're relatively flexible. We don't have a hard mandate in that respect. But I do talk to the company about it and openly say that I struggle with this. I don't see you guys that often. Anytime I do see you, it's just killer. It's awesome. And we do better things. And so I just encourage them to think about it and build their relationships internally so we can get that teamwork.
Yeah, and one of the guests I had before COVID, when I was starting my podcast, we've now done about 310 episodes, but some years ago, before COVID, and his book was called Office Optional, and he was doing this unusual thing of they had no offices. He had 1,500 people, no offices, but they came together in certain, like you've done, certain hubs, and 3 times a year they came together with their partners, and they paid for them all to fly into one location. They had some guys in India, a lot of people around America, and they had 3 days they even had a band that never played together, but came together to play as a band from all different parts of the country. And they had events and, all the kind of things that are now common practice when you come back together again. But it was a great buzz about the place. But yet, when they had to do a particular project for a client, they might hire somewhere to bring the team together for a week to work on it, and then just give the rooms back that they'd hired. But they found it very, very successful, and that was even before people were doing it. Everyone thought it was a bit unusual. I'm not sure it really works. Now, of course, it becomes the standard practice. Different question for you, Jason. We learned from the good times and the bad times, but I was wondering, was there a dark time from you in your career which was really tough and that you could talk about, and what you learned from it? But before that, I was going to ask you to explain to everybody listening around the world, what does 6sense do in a layman's term that someone as stupid as me would understand?
I don't think you're stupid. But I understand the introduction. So 6sense is what we call a revenue AI artificial intelligence platform. We market for business to business, companies selling to companies. And the simple concept is we connect sellers and marketers and that business function of what we call go-to-market to leverage data, large sets of data, first and third party or behavioral data, and make sense of all this data output we have today. How can you understand your prospect, your customer better, such that you can design sales and marketing tactics to reach them? And so think of just a more modern data-driven approach to selling and marketing, as opposed to a little more art. We're using science to complement that art. And so it is the balance of the traditional sales and marketing, but with a data approach, all AI driven, to help you decide. We have, buzzwords like Gen AI, generative AI. We're leveraging this in order to help companies be smarter about their tactical outreaches to their prospects.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, because there's two thoughts that come from it. One is I've been reading Suleiman's book about the coming wave about AI, and he was DeepMind and then went into Google. Both the good things about AI and the things that we just need to try and contain, if you can, if that's even possible, with something as expansive as AI. And the second one was an article in The Week, which this lady, the extract was from an article she'd written, but where she asked Meta for her data on herself, and she got 20,000 pages of data on her from Instagram and Facebook. And they knew everything from when she woke up to when she accessed a bank and what time she did and all these different places. And as she trolled through this huge amounts of data, she was a data scientist, she found that they just know so much about you. And particularly Meta, and they have third-party organizations who also harvest the data for Meta and give it to them, but you don't know they're doing that. How do we balance this wish to be open, but yet at the same time, when there's a lot of stuff about us that I'm not sure I'm happy with everybody knowing everything I'm doing at every moment of the day? But have you personally come across, because you're a man of high integrity, you come across a place where we don't want Cambridge Analytica, with the misuse of stuff for the Trump campaign or Brexit, but at the same time, we need to have ability to access data. But I don't know, where's the middle ground? Have you got a view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on look, we believe in being responsible. We respect privacy. We respect all privacy laws, whether they be county, state, country, and that we believe in for sure. But at the same time, we know that the data, understanding data is going to be a quest that is never ending. And so why not try to understand this data to help it make everyone better? And what we find in our practice is most people all opt in. So they're saying, yeah, you can use my data. And then once we learn from this data, we help companies be smarter. And actually we find, and most of the younger generations say, I'm okay to tell people attributes about me because I like to receive my messages more customized, more roughly right, if you will, as opposed to blindly spam marketing. And so I'd say we're helping companies do their job and do it smarter, and by not compromising data and being responsible with it. And we do call it, it's sort of like people say, well, does it tell you? It can be surgical in a way relative to the data, or more precise, but it's also not a silver bullet. It's more of a compass or a beacon, and it sort of helps put people in the right direction to be more to drive efficacy. And I think it works. I think that helps the end user as well, and I think it's responsible.
Yeah.
So we're on this quest, and actually, I saw a 60-minute special last night about AI applied to behavioral psychology, and how it's really tough to go see a psychologist. You got to set the appointment. It's one-on-ones. Their calendars are booked out a month. And when you actually need help, you can't get in. So there's these new companies that are coming up with AI-driven bots that say, hey, I'm feeling sort of depressed today, something with my kid or my spouse or whatever it may be, or work. And it starts to drive down answers, but it can go wrong. That make it mostly right. So there's a lot of interesting, if you try to pull on that thread, you're like, whoa, that's interesting. So what's worse, that you don't get help at all, or you get help you need, more broadly applicable, but it might not be always accurate? Now, again, I'm not
And
endorsing. I'm saying it's something interesting to think about because we got a ways to go there.
yeah, and I do think it's very interesting, and particularly I'm fascinated with my brother's family, all in medicine and surgery and doctors and GPs. How when I have a medical issue that I would like to, chat GPT 4 is the best I have, but to be able to ask them some pretty good questions about whatever it is, and it gives some pretty helpful comments. And when I take those comments to the specialist doctor that I'm seeing, and they go, "Oh, these are good comments. Where do they come from?" And I go, "This is ChatGPT." He went, "Well, it's pretty accurate, actually." And of course,
Yeah.
they're passing bar exams and everything else, and the level of intelligence is growing and growing day by day. We were going to talk about a dark moment.
All
Uh,
right.
I'm sorry about that. We won't spend long on there, but in business and what it taught you, Jason, because you're someone who does learn as you go along. So, what would you pick out?
Sure. I think I've had plenty of dark moments, that have been formidable and changed me, and you learn from them. Um, Gosh, I mean, I've had a dark moment when I disagreed with a boss. Uh, Found myself, more young, in age and career, and just full of bravado on my side and learning, and I can do better and bigger things. And I think I found in the moment two things. One, I either wasn't listening, um, or two, I just really disagreed with them, um, but didn't know quite how to mature myself through that piece. So, yes, I've been put down, I've been criticized, I've been humiliated in my career, by bosses, and that's pretty dark. And when you're young, you're trying to understand why, like, why me? Why am I being singled out? Ultimately, I rose above, and frankly, I think as I look back, I learned that they just weren't good people. And yeah, I had some youthful exuberance that, perhaps, needed to be checked, but that was not the reason for that dark moment. So I said, there's good people and there's bad, and you got to keep your true north and stay true to who you are. Another dark moments. I remember at 6sense, I joined when we were about 5 million. It was 6.5 years ago. Today we're over 200. And we had a dark moment where we were running out of money, and the company was still working through its phase of, do people want what we have to sell? And do we have the right product? And we had a lot of investors in the community that wasn't quite sure if they should give us money because the path was not obvious. And I wasn't sure, hired all of my colleagues, former, I felt a great responsibility to see this thing through, but I believe in the company. I said, we've made progress, but not enough to get the money. And we did some creative financing to bridge the gap, buy us 6 more months. But it was I had two of my trusted colleagues quit after like 6, 7, 8 months in the company. They're like, this, and that really set me back. I'm like, okay, we're running out of money. They quit. This is hard. What did I do? What did I do to their careers? Are the rest of the people going to leave or follow? And proud to say, 6 years later, we actually started from that moment. I think we doubled the company every year, for 5+ years.
Well done.
And that was a dark moment. I'll tell you, I don't know if that's as dark as some of the things that touch you personally, like the first example I gave you. I think, the getting respect and accolades from your mentors and from your bosses are probably always primary and core to my heart. And that's why I always believe in the carrot, not the stick. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm still listening and learning there too. I have my moments where I'm not the best leader and I'm frustrated. And I almost like told people, hey, there's got to be like a word, a safe word. Just say, snap me out of my, whatever my maniacal fix is on the moment of the day. But yeah, I think we all have to learn to be inspiring, sort of motivational, leaders with humility and respect, mutual
Yeah.
respect.
So if you hear the word aardvark, you'll know that I want you to listen.
That's going to be the new one.
The
I was
new word,
trying to.
aardvark. It's such an unusual. We were talking when we got to know each other about the importance of purpose, having a sense of meaning and purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And you've been in the software industry for a long time after those days in Northwest Mutual. And it's had some highs and lows. It's had, dot-com days. It's had IPOs and markets crash and things like that. But what gives your life meaning and purpose? And how do you ensure you're living your life on purpose rather than off purpose?
I remember you asked me that as a prep question and said you might ask that, and it almost stumped me. There's a lot of things that come to mind, Jonathan. My purpose is to be fulfilled, and to be happy and to work with others. So I love people. I love working with people. Community makes me happy. Uh, I think you challenged me to a moment of calm before we started today, which was like, imagine yourself in some place you really love. And it was at the top of a ski mountain, about to drop in with my mates, and just, nature meets friendship, uh, is a happy place. I lost train of thought. Where were we going here?
We were just talking about what gives your life meaning and purpose.
Oh, purpose. So
you sort of
yeah,
know when you're on purpose. It's almost like
yeah.
a
So
line drawn along the street, and you're on that line. But sometimes, a bit like an aeroplane getting knocked off by the winds, you can get off purpose, and you suddenly find you're way off the line, and you hadn't noticed it. It's almost like you've lost the line. You've got to get back on there.
it's easy. We're all on the treadmill. I mean, I never sort of finished the purpose. My purpose is to support my family. My purpose is to learn. My purpose is to connect through community, and and then give back. Like, I love right now at my stage giving back and tutoring next generations. And when you get knocked off, by the way, I think it's really easy. That sort of hamster wheel.
Mm.
I like to, something I preach at the company is a balanced life. And I believe in it. And I remember back in the day when I talked about sort of that command and control, more stick leadership style, people wouldn't work out. They wouldn't talk about mental health. Everything was hidden. Like, you had to be at the office 7 to 7. And like, who lives like that? And I remember when I got my first chance of leadership, this is with JDA software. Now it's called Blue Yonder. Said, hey, look, I prioritize being healthy and active, and having time for yourself. And if you guys want to work out, like, put it on your calendar. If it's at 2 o'clock, if it's at 10 o'clock, it doesn't have to be at 6 a.m. or 7 p.m. Like, I don't care when you do it. Like, just do it. Like, put it on your calendar, and that's your time. And by the way, it doesn't mean a workout. It could be meditation. It could be yoga. It could be reading a book. Like, whatever fills your cup outside of work, you've got to live this balanced life. And I think we all realize this in COVID, like, oh my gosh. And so getting off the line is, for me, it's like, I intentionally I actually pretty good at it. Like,
Mm. Mm.
I give back to myself, and I do set boundaries, and I'm actually pretty selfish about it. But the reason I am is it brings me back to work in a much more energized fashion. By the way, I also say, have fun. Like, I
Yeah.
love, like, have fun at work, have, responsible fun, but have fun at what you're doing. Why bother if
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Well, this really resonates, because the next question I was going to ask you was about what I call the health quotient. So we talked about moral quotient, purpose quotient, health quotient. And I was going to ask you a number of questions, but you're already beginning to answer them about the balanced life, not working in the office 7 a.m., 7 p.m. with no breaks and no food, and the importance of meditation, yoga, giving back to yourself. And I've done a number of things. One was going to Peru, to some of the sacred places like Machu Picchu, and being with some of their shaman, who were fascinating guys, and taking some plant-based medicine, which was quite an unusual thing for a British Army officer to be doing. That was very shaping. The other one was doing the Hoffman process, which is a 7-day, very intensive process, looking back at your childhood and the patterns of behavior. And now in June, I've just signed myself up to do the 7-day Vipassana meditation silent retreat. It'll be, 10 hours of meditation, getting up at 4 in the morning and finishing at 9:30. But I'm really looking forward to it. And actually, as I practice it, I do find it really helps my mental health, which then helps my sleep. And as you say, that all these bits are connected. It's a bit like that film Avatar, where the sort of the tree and all the roots and how it connects to us all in the forest. And I am finding that I've got a great bodybuilder personal trainer who works with me, and then my diet and everything else. And I train 4 times a week and have a run as well. So that's important. But the mental health has really helped my meditation. And just tell me a bit more about what you do, your top tips about things you personally do yourself, Jason, that you find might be helpful to other people. It works for you, might work for them. What do you find helps you?
Well, Jonathan, I got to say, I think I should be interviewing you because, and learning from you, I haven't quite gone there to your limits. But as you say, it's what do I do? Um, for me, I really get a kick and sort of energize and relax out of sports. So whether it's skiing, running, mountain biking, surfing, sailing, like I just love to do a sport in this I'm a runner, I'm a biker. Uh, uh, so sort of that spiritual release is getting on the bike and going to the top of the mountain and looking out and having that cardio workout. It is being on the top of the mountains in nature, skiing and just sort of soaking it in and going backcountry and working out to ski down. 2 hours up to ski 20 minutes down, but sounds painful, but it's actually pretty spiritual and fulfilling for me. And then there's some sport in there. So you're like trying to master something new. And so I took up surfing in COVID and I find it incredibly difficult but really fun, dangerous and thrilling. And my favorite part about that is being in the water, waiting on the wave and talking to your friends. And there's a lot of sitting, before you catch that wave and then you miss the wave, which is for us beginners. I'm big on reading. I really enjoy sort of being by myself. My morning routine is to wake up before everybody else in the house and have a cup of coffee and read and catch up. And that can be work. It can be, usually it's not. I mean, usually I consume the Wall Street Journal first thing in the morning. And that's sort of my check-in. I'm looking out the window and open the doors. I'm getting some fresh air as the world wakes up. I am recently, I'm not on your meditative journey, but I am doing things like the Calm app and the Daily J, and I love that. It's 7 minutes. It's all it takes, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
So those are a few things that come to mind. For me, it is mostly sport that I found actually sort of interesting. Like I'm a thinker. I'm always thinking, and getting away from the thinking is business thinking is important. So running, you think. Biking, not so much, particularly mountain biking, because you got to pay attention to the stick, rock, or obstacle that will knock you off. So I tend to like to do the sports where you can't think. You have to be very focused. That's, on the sport as opposed to when you run, like, oh man, I go through, an hour's worth of material when I'm running. So
No, it's brilliant. And I love all the things you describe. And I think of surfing in Australia and Sri Lanka. I'm not a very good surfer at all, a real novice. But I remember somewhere out there, I was knocked over, and somewhere out there was my board. And it came right through my hands that were like that. It came sideways on and smacked me on the nose. I staggered out of the waves. I was concussed. I think about how dangerous it was. But lovely, all the different things you're doing. And I like you, listen to Daily J every morning when I listen up on Calm. But I am finding how hard it is to do an hour's worth of Vipassana practice meditation on a little bench I've got in my gym. But you know what? It's already starting to make a huge difference. But it's very hard to focus on the breathing, just on the breathing in and breathing out, and doing the scanning of the body. But I'll let you know how it goes in June.
like I said, we need to interview you, Jonathan.
Well, definitely, we'll have a chat. We'll have a chat about it when I finish in June. And can you imagine me not talking for 10 days? It's just unbelievable. I can't even communicate or nod or wink at people. before we go into the executive team's favorite book and top tip, interested listening has been very important to you, and it's all part of emotional and social intelligence, or EQ. And I think you're one of the CEOs, for me, from the many hundreds I've met, who really epitomizes the importance of IQ and EQ, but you've really got a lovely mix of the two. And so my question is, what's your tip on how you listen well to other people?
Well, that was a nice compliment, but you know, the reason I have EQ is because I don't have much IQ, Jonathan. So I had to be good at one of them. Uh, uh, I, gosh, I think I'm still learning, as I mentioned earlier, to listen. There's one way to think about it, which I always tell people: if you want to sell or appreciate someone or understand where they're coming from, listen, and they'll teach you everything. Like, ask open-ended questions and wait. Like, let them get through the answer. And then when they're about to stop their answer, don't let that awkward silence have them start again. And they'll keep talking and they'll keep talking. And people talk about what they care about. And it's the best tutorial or guidebook for you to be relevant and to be an advisor and to be smart. And I also said back in the selling days, even today, like, it's not selling. It's solutions, problem solving. I never felt like a salesman, and I was one of the best. Learned at SAP, and that's because I genuinely wanted to solve a problem for someone, and I thought so artificial if I was actually just hawking a good. And like, what do they care about? What would make them happy? What problem am I trying to solve? And you gotta listen if you want to figure that out. You gotta ask questions and then wait. And that builds you your blueprint for an engagement that I think is meaningful and something where someone wants to talk to you again. I'm a deep feeler. I deeply care. I'm over emotional. Like, sometimes it's an Achilles heel, but in my DNA, like, I really care. I'm motivated, but I really, I give an expletive all the time about what I do and who this person is. And I think we all know, like, I want to feel important to them. I want them to enjoy the engagement. That's our own self-conscious and inner ego sort of working. And so if I make it about them, not me, by the way, it's usually all about us, not them. You got to, like, just sort of check yourself to say, hey, do I care to learn? And I can do it through questioning.
I think that's beautifully put, and I haven't heard many put it as clearly as that. And I also want to acknowledge, when we had our chat, there was a moment you shared something personal and you choked up. And we just sat with that emotion. And I think very few CEOs can do that. They think they have to put a mask on, be the hard man, the know-it-all, the smartest man in the room. And actually, they don't care about, they don't even think, how do I want this person to feel at the end of this conversation? And what's in it for them? And it's always what's in it for me. And, they just got to do what I want them to do. So I just want to say thank you, because I do think you genuinely, for me, epitomize an inspiring leader with the three hums I talk about. My friend Roger Steer taught me about this. I don't know where he got it from, but we were both professors at the City of London Business School, and it's humility, humanity, and humor. And you talk about fun, which is the humor, and you definitely have got the humility and the humanity. We don't want to overdo it. And I was, of course, slightly teasing you when I was saying I'm thick, or no, or I'm stupid or something. But I did have a teacher who told me I was stupid when I was young. It was because I couldn't do my maths, I couldn't spell. It turned out I'm dyslexic. But of course, in those days, they didn't have any tests for it. They just thought you were stupid. And it was probably until my mid-30s that I actually was convinced by people to go and have a test, and found out I wasn't stupid. I was just dyslexic and had dyscalculia, which was a problem with
Right.
numbers. I'm going to be interviewing a couple of people I've had out, a couple of entrepreneurs who are like me, are dyslexic. They've done terribly well. One, Jason, who's great friends with Sir Richard Branson. He's another dyslexic entrepreneur, and very inspiring. So thank you for just showing up the way you do, particularly with the illustrating the importance of listening, and EQ, and just allowing them to think without assaulting their thinking, it's called. When you jump in and you speak over someone, you're assaulting their thinking. You wouldn't ever assault anybody, but if you assault their thinking, that makes you think about it. 3 questions. Turning around a toxic team, or when you got a toxic individual, what's your advice, very briefly, on what you've done to turn around a toxic team, or when you have a toxic individual?
Well, if we're going to come back to the same principles, you got to go in and sort of assess the situation, seek first to understand before being understood. Listen. I've been brought into many companies to actually turn around the trajectory. It's sort of what my career has been in the last four or 5 jobs. And through that, I listen, learn, assess, and then make a decision. And generally speaking, it's either bad. It's a combination of things. Combination of you might have some bad eggs. You got to assess who those people are, who work well and who don't, and you got to build this team. And you're sort of like a new coach coming in and going through the draft, and you got to trade people in and out to build the team that you believe in. And by the way, every leader is different, and so it's okay to have the team that you think and can trust, but those that'll sort of rally together and if it's 8 oars in the boat, who are your best oarsmen, and what position are they? Strokes, 6, 7, bow. And by the way, I mean, there's not a single leader or book that's written that doesn't say, we hold on to people too long. We make bad decisions about getting bad people out. Egos or bad behavior is toxic. It takes down the rest of the team. We do have a responsibility to the company. I always say we're an A company. We deserve A people. So make sure your team is made of A's. But toxicity is sort of like, and then there's, generally speaking, probably a lot of potential bad practice, bad business decisions, bad goal setting, bad business process workflow. So I'd say it's the combination of team plus business process and goal setting is how you turn it around. And you've just got to be a student of observation and go back to the listening, ask lots of questions to learn, and assemble a bunch of people that have different talents to solve the problem.
Thank you, Jason. Because again, that is I've asked that question in different forms to many different CEOs and leaders, and I think that's the most comprehensive and also the most wisest approach, particularly the listen, learn, assess, decide, be a student of observation, right? And turning companies around through listening. But I think sometimes it's the system that's broken, and some people are not shown for their best. And other times you have to help them find their happiness elsewhere. And it's not where you're at right now, and they're not the right fit. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be, just because they haven't performed, doesn't mean they're a bad performer. They can perform well somewhere else. It's just not working where you are. And I think, as you say, having that courageous conversation early enough with people, time and again, leaders have said to me, I don't know why I waited a year before I got rid of them, because it just, I just knew ages on it wasn't working, but I just avoided the difficult conversation because I'd had a friend of mine, I've known them for years. How do I get rid of my mates, But again, that's always a difficult one.
Well, I want to add to that. If you don't mind, I want to add to it. I mean, a lot about it is leading by example and clearly articulating expectations. So often, I say it's not always about just getting rid of people. It's about being a good leader. And so a lot of times the leadership is the problem. It's not the general employee or the new joiner, or it's bad leadership. Like, you've got to set clear expectations. You got to communicate. You've got to be reasonable. You got to be likable. You have to be respected, inspiring. I mean, these are all leadership qualities that you've interviewed people about. And so I like to lead by example, and I like to communicate to the company. I like to show that extreme humility, as you mentioned. Like, yeah, you said something that really touched me, and I had to pause because it hit a nerve and stirred some deep emotion. And the company's seen that from me time and time again. I am so impressed about how they have created this company and got us where we are. And I'm just one of 1,200. Like it's amazing what we do together as a team. And that touches me deeply, is like what we have accomplished is not easy. And it's yeah, it's not easy. So sorry, I was just sort of
No,
ripping on toxic teams. It's not, a lot of times it's about the leaders themselves and the communication style. What you're laying down is sort of, it's okay to operate in this blueprint. Like, this is what I believe in. And then people can start to believe, like, oh, okay, you told me how, what swim lanes I can work in. And by the way, those lanes are pretty big. That's cool. And, we believe in meritocracy. We believe in flat organization. Yes, you can email your boss's boss's boss. Who cares? Like, if a boss cares about someone going above their head, then they themselves are probably not a good boss.
beautifully put. And I think many people will see the problem is out there and they never go, do you know what? That might have actually been my poor leadership. And I wasn't clear on what went on, or I've not tackled an issue, or I've not set clear expectations, or you used Stephen Covey's comment, first seek first to understand and then be understood. That was 50 years ago, Stephen Covey, the father. I was very lucky. Have listened to episode 298, I think. Stephen Covey Jr., who wrote a great book called Trust and Inspire. And we become good friends as a result of that. We met in London. And his book is very much the encapsulation of everything I've believed in over the last 62 years, as I picked up on from the good leaders I've been with. Penultimate question, and then we'll go into the top tip. Favorite book? If you recommend a book you've read or listened to, an audiobook maybe for someone like me who's dyslexic, but a good book that you'd recommend that you think that's a good one on leadership. I really took a lot from that.
This question's always interesting. I tend to go back to like the last thing I read.
Yeah,
But
okay.
the one that really stuck with me when I went into more of my entrepreneurial stage and sort of startup, trying to grow startups, was Ben Horowitz's, the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, the
Hard thing about hard things.
things. I really liked that. It was like, oh, all right, other people are having these problems. This is normal. That I really enjoyed, because I felt like it walked me through what I was experiencing and gave me the courage to lead, learn from those things. And again, it's all about that humility, right? Oh, well, other companies have problems too, and they're going through things we go through, and they have down days, up days. The one that I'm reading right now is actually another venture capitalist, John Doerr. Measure what matters, and it's about OKRs. And we're on a kick of, every year we're trying to make our company better. I'd say every quarter. I feel like we live in dog years. We're learning, and the one thing I love most about this company and most is that I do feel like every year it's a different chapter. We're solving different problems. We're growing. We're maturing, and this one is all about how to effectively roll out OKRs as a way to set objectives and key results, the acronym. And then I want to be the best of the best in the company. I want to do it great. I don't want it to become a management burden or employee burden. I want it to be something that actually helps us be efficient as a company. And so those are two.
Fantastic. No, OKRs, when working with the lovely guys up the coast from you in Seattle, in Remitly, they really have used OKRs very effectively. And I added to that a sort of approach of the thinking environment where people don't interrupt each other, but they all get the chance to speak, and it works really well. They've got OKRs really well nailed. Okay, so Jason, we're going to do the final piece. I'd just love you to say who you are, the role that you're doing now, and what the business does, and share with us your 2-minute top leadership tip. So over to you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Jason Zintak. I'm the CEO of 6sense. We're a revenue AI platform bridging sellers and marketers together to break down and understand big data in order to orchestrate their sales and marketing pitches, help them better decide, know anything, do everything, if you will. And so top tips, I'd say, be curious, listen to understand, be genuine, and practice humility. I'd say challenge yourself, set big goals, hard ones you don't think you can achieve, and then give it all you got, like go after it. So aim high and go get it. It's fun in pursuit. And then it's a journey, have fun while you do it. And lastly, make it a team effort. Be one team. Really critical.
Yeah. Jason, thank you very much indeed for being on the Inspiring Leadership podcast. I really have enjoyed that. I've taken an awful lot from it, and I know people listening will do. And if you're out there listening in 140 different countries around the world to Jason, please, like it, add some comments on whatever platform you're listening to, and follow us, because we've got some amazing people for you to listen to and learn from their experience, so you don't have to make all the mistakes that we've made. Let's short the circuit. So Jason, thanks again for being on the Inspiring Leadership podcast.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it. It's fun to talk.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.